If you're trying to get in, try again.
I just have to share with you, I've been taking this kosher course because I'm really working on getting my kitchen, getting it done. And I had to hunt for a thrips cloth to be able to check my vegetables.
mm,
And I finally found one online and oh my gosh.
well, Baruch Hashem. Baruch Hashem. Yeah, these things could be difficult. Hold on a second. Let's bring up the text. Hey, Rebecca, and oh, I see you're trying to join twice, but either way, one of you joined. Um, let's bring up the laws. Okay, last week we were in the middle of the difficult laws of Muktzeh. So we spent most of last week's class bringing up going through the Chabad.org, the charts. So we still have them on my page here in case we have to go run back to them. But basically what we're going to be learning now is what we did last week was in the charts of defining the different categories of Muktzeh. We have Muktzeh with things themselves, our Muktzeh. And so we remind ourselves that the reason why Muktzeh, brought down the reason why the rabbis and especially Nehemiah and the members of the Great Assembly kind of instituted Muktzeh, and some ideas of Muktzeh with before was that is to bring an awareness of Shabbos. And just that idea that you have to question everything you do. Can I touch this? Can I not touch this? I mean, not touch it. Can I move it? Can I hold it? Can I use it? Gives a very, very strong awareness of Shabbos. And they did that because they were finding that people were laxing in their keeping the Shabbos. So there's different levels of Muktzeh. And the question also is dependent. Rebecca, I see you coming in a few times. There's different types of muksa, and there's also a question of what kind of muksa is it? What's the reason muksa means basically like set aside. And if it's set aside, you can't use it on Shabbos, but could you not use it for any reason? So we went through the chart already of when are times you could use it if you want to move it, if you need to use it for another kind of use. So we talked about foods. And we talked about foods that are not cooked, and we talked about what else did we cover? Last week we covered in law number 3 that, for instance, non-kosher food, right? So it's you can't eat it, but you're allowed to use it for something, and a non-Jew can eat it, and it's cooked already, etc. So the question is if it could be picked up to given or not. Okay, now we're holding law number 4, which is the question about noilad. Now, again, as it said in the summary that we learned last week, noilad, which is something that comes into being. Nolad means from the word like to give birth. So just like giving birth, something comes into being, right? The fetus comes out and becomes a child into this world. So noilad is anything that comes into being. And so there's a whole tractate in the Mishnayos and then in the Talmud known as a tractate Beitza Shenol de Yom Tif. If an egg is hatched on Yom Tif, are you allowed to touch it or not? Because it wasn't there before Yom Tif. So that's classic noilad, right? It came into being now when the Yom Tif comes in. So that's in the laws of Yom Tif. We're more stringent with noilad than we are in Shabbos because of the ability to cook on Yom Tif. So therefore, there has to be more restriction of what you could touch because you're able. The laws of muktzah are not so strict because you're touching a lot more. You're doing a lot more because you're cooking. So the question is, therefore, noilad is more something that comes into being is more strict than Yom Tov. But we're not learning the laws of Yom Tov now specifically. We are learning the laws of Shabbos. So let's see law number 4. Again, if we need to, we'll go back to the charts. Noilad, something that comes into being. Behind what does that mean? Davishin chadish hayom. Something that's new now. For instance, give us an example. Afer, mean aish. If you burn a piece of wood, so a piece of wood burns is in the yeah. So it's not important how the wood burned. The ash comes into being now. Before it wasn't ash, it was a tree. Now it's ash, and you could use ash, let's say, for something. Is it considered muksa? Mina aish shehuska hayoim that was burnt today. Any Yehudi, let's say non-Jew made a fire, and he did it today means the ash wasn't sitting there in the chimney since before Shabbos. So it's noilad that came into being now. Or the classic, like I said before, Beitzah Shenol Da'ayom. If a chicken lays an egg on the Shabbos, they didn't lay the egg on Friday, but it laid it on Shabbos. Hamayim hazoich lemin ha'ilonos, or bimei Nisan, or the sap that comes out of the trees in the spring months of Nisan, so it wasn't available before. Here now that Shulchan Aruch says, let's say It didn't even happen into being today. But it came available from something that was forbidden to do today. For instance, meaning to say, an apple on a tree didn't come today, didn't happen today. But for you to be able to pick up the apple is something that had to be happen today. For instance, if it falls off the tree today, or if a non-Jew picks it today. So it was picked today, but if it's still hanging on the tree, surely you can't touch it, it's connected. So it wasn't that it came into being, but it came from action that you would be forbidden to do today. For instance, if trees fall off a tree, although the falling off the tree is natural, but if you were to pick it today, then that wouldn't be natural. Or if a non-Jew picked it on Shabbos. Hold on, Aaron, we're going to finish the law. V'cholav, or instance, milk. Milk, we spoke about if you're allowed to milk the cows again, so because it's tsar balachayim, but can you drink that milk? So here you have milk that was milked today. It's noilad. That's called noilad. That comes into being. Gam ken asur metilta. You're not allowed to touch it because it's something that is a noilad, something that's one of the definitions of muktzeh. Why? Because it wasn't available on Friday. That's the point. You couldn't decide to use it on Friday. It wasn't there. Even if you know you would milk it, and the cow would have the milk. You would pick. You could have. You knew that the apple's there, but it wasn't available now. So it's not considered available. You can't say that in your mind you knew the Gentile is gonna burn a fire and you're gonna use his ash or her ash. So therefore, that's considered muktzeh. It wasn't available on Friday. So therefore, it's also betilta. You can't carry it on Shabbos. Also, what about a pas of any Yehudi b'Shabbos? Pasta, the dough is not edible. So now it became the bread that was baked by a non-Jew on Shabbos. So clearly over here, the Gentile wasn't baking it for you because the city is mostly Gentile. Therefore, his customers would be Gentile or hers. We could be clear and not just because if the Gentile did it for the Jew, that's a separate problem of a midra l'nachi of a Gentile doing something for a Jew on Shabbos. But here, let's say we could say we don't have to say that the Gentile did it for the Jew because there's plenty of Gentiles around that we could assume that he baked it for them if we're talking about a bakery. Imhu shas hatchak. So then it says, but if it's a time of difficulty, if you're in a difficult situation, or the tzarech mitzvah, if you need for a mitzvah, muti yisrael la'achal b'Shabbos, then the bread that is baked by a Gentile, if it was baked in a way that we're certain that it was that we could assume that it was baked for non-Jews, it wasn't baked for you, and you have all of a sudden a simcha, if you realize you didn't have chalas, so you could take it from him on Shabbos, obviously in the way that's permitted, like we learned about how you could purchase things, take things from the store on Shabbos. Okay, let's go. We'll go to the footnotes in a second. Aaron, we'll get to your question in a second. I just want to say one thing over here is that Noilad, we're learning it now in one little. Again, this is the Kitzur. This is one little law in the laws of Muktzeh. What we talked about, there is noilad and other things. We went through the foods on Shabbos, of using foods on Shabbos. We discussed noilad, things that come into being, which is another problem of that's one of the lamitas malachas. But here we're talking about from the perspective of Muktzeh. So for instance, we had ice. Can you drink the waters of ice that liquefies in an empty cup, not in a water cup? If it's in the water, it comes part of the water. But if you were to just leave ice in a bucket, could you drink that or use that water, etc.? But that was something we discussed when it came to foods. Here we're talking about the laws of muktzah. Yes, Aaron, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, two things. Could you leave a basket under the tree of fruit, knowing that it might fall, and if it falls, take those fruits to eat? And number two, so that doesn't hit the ground and get dirty. And number two, what if you had a fire, it made ashes, and could you make it in such a way that the wind could blow it and then set more wood on fire? You didn't do it, but the wind did, but you set it up to do that before Shabbos and then use the fire?
Okay, so here hold on. We're not talking about over here the fire. We're talking about the ash. And for whatever
Yeah,
reason,
but if ash is hot enough, like if you're on a camping trip, so you make the fire before Shabbos, and then you can make a wind tunnel or whatever you do, or just windy, and and you put some wood on the side that for the morning that you know won't be on fire, but by the wind, the ash will get on the wood and burn it. And now you have a fire to keep your food warm in the morning. That because
This is another whole discussion. It's not a question of Muktzeh. This is a question we have to analyze the situation as an idea of a fire burning on Shabbos, of having a fire set on Shabbos. If you have a fire in the fireplace on Shabbos, of course that's allowed to leave it in the fireplace. We're talking about the concern of fire with food is when the basis of the concern of fire and food is when the concern is that you may do something to the fire which is forbidden on Shabbos because you want the food to get hot or cook or all that. But I'm talking about just to have a fire in the fireplace for your heat, and you have one log burning, and the next log continues to burn. That's nothing to do with the ash. Here we're not talking about ash as in a fire ash. We're talking like ash that could be used for like dirt. Whether
okay, so now my question is
but
go back
hold
to
on,
the first question.
but
No,
let's
go
go.
back to the first question.
Yes,
Can
the
you
first question.
leave baskets under your fruit trees to collect the fruit for eating on Shabbos if you know they're going to fall?
Okay, so but that it doesn't change that's actually a double problem. The idea of it falling on the floor, you can't pick it up, not because it's on the floor, because the apple was on the tree before Shabbos, which means now it wasn't edible. You couldn't eat it now because of the Isser. You're not allowed to pick fruit on Shabbos. So now that it fell off, the problem isn't because it's dirty. The problem is because it's noilad. It came into being. It wasn't available for you. It means if you would have picked it on Friday, that would be fine. But you didn't pick it on Friday. Now it fell off the tree. So you're saying, "Oh, I couldn't have eaten it an hour ago because it was Shabbos, but now I would love to have an apple." And it happened to fall down from the tree, so it's like an apple. But it only came into being available for you halachically in middle of Shabbos. That's called noilad. Putting a basket under makes a bigger problem because we're going to learn called the basis of davra. So you're not allowed to place something that you're not allowed to make something muktzeh. Now that the apple is muktzeh, if the basket is placed and the apples fall in the basket, you can't touch the basket. So you're extending the muktzeh to the basket. That's also prohibited on Shabbos. So it's a double problem. But it's nothing. Touching the apple is not going to be. It's not going to help by putting a basket because and it actually adds to the problem by now making the basket unmovable. You understand? But that we have to get that. We're going to get to the next laws, and that's another law within the laws that we're going to touch on over here. I'm trying to figure out why we didn't have noilad in our chart last week. Maybe we did. Valuable items we're getting to soon. Items whose primary use was Shemirath Shabbos. Muktzeh not
Can you
allowed.
just go back one law that I heard you mention now that you talked last week because I was on vacation? You said that you can or can't drink water from ice that's melted.
No, that we didn't talk about that last week. We talked about that many weeks ago.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Okay, hold on a second. Also doesn't have it here. Okay. Whatever. So I didn't definitely remember it was in the charts. Okay, let's see the footnotes here. Footnote number 13. Noilad. What is Noilad? Okay, we discussed Noilad before. Noilad means something that came into being. Unlike the Noilad discussed in paragraph 1, where the vessels change from, in other words, vessels that broke. We spoke about that in the first law. That if, for instance, on Yom Tiv, if glass breaks and a pitcher breaks, and you can use it as a bowl. So on Shabbos is permissible, on Yom Tov it's not. So that's not the same noilad we're talking about over here. So unlike the noilad discussed in paragraph 1, where the vessel changed from form, in other words, vessels that broke, and as long as they can still be used in a way similar to their original use, are not muktzeh. Here we are dealing with an absolute noilad, meaning that is things that were not available at all for use before Shabbos. This noilad is forbidden equally on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and not exactly equally, but pretty much the same idea. Sirama Chai Adam Mishnah Brura. Okay, so the difference between the vessel that we learned about a few weeks ago that splits in half, the vessel was able to be used as a pitcher of water. Now that it broke, let's say, forget the sharp edges part of the glass part, that's something else. But let's say it's earthenware, that's not dangerous. And so now it could be used as a bowl for fruit. So it's never lost, it just changed its use a little bit, but it had some use. Now we're talking about the egg was never here. The apples weren't, you couldn't eat the apples on Shabbos because they were still hanging, or the ash wasn't here. So that's different. That's a different type of noilad. So he says, or an egg that was laid today. This is all brought down the Masechta Beitza, like I said, Tractate Beitza, which is one of the tractates of the Mishnah and Talmud. There is a dispute among poskim. Poskim means the authorities of law. Some poskim consider a newly laid egg as an absolute noilad, means it wasn't here before, even though it was in the stomach of the chicken. Most disagree and permit handling it on Shabbos. Look at Aruch HaShulchan. Nevertheless, the Mishnah Brura rules that since the egg may not be eaten on Shabbos, neither may it be handled. So therefore, because you can't eat it, so therefore you can't move it on Shabbos if you want to move it to the kitchen or what have you. Okay, so that's on the case of Noilad. Okay, what does it mean by the Sath on the fruits of Nisan? Rain and snow that fall on Shabbos are this is the question that we spoke about a little bit. What Aaron asked about. Rain and snow that fall on Shabbos are Noilad. If you have a cup outside and it rains and it fills up and you want to use the water for, I don't know what, drinking or washing your hands, it says so the rain and snow that fall on Shabbos are Noilad because the rain wasn't there. So it says the Pri Megadim. And also snow that falls on Shabbos. It wasn't there before. Pri Megadim. Snow that falls in during the week and you want to use it on Shabbos could be the question of the ice, but if you're using it as ice, not to melt it, it's not a problem. Pri Megadim, preface of law of Muktzeh and Shuvas HaGaonim 242 allow handling rain and snow. So it's a disagreement. Some say you can, and some say you cannot use.
Could you put stuff like your fridge is full or whatever the case is, and it snows outside, and you want to put your bottles of drink in the snow to keep them cold? Could you do that, or is that Musa or no lug?
It's a very good question. If according to the opinions that the snow is muktzeh because it's snowed and it snowed during Shabbos and the snow was not there before Shabbos. Because if the snow was there and just kind of compacted, maybe it'd be differently. I remember clearly now we're we're mentioning Chavdal Tevis. We're now in Tevis. The 24th of Tevis of many years ago, I spent the 24th of Tevis is the Yortzeit of the Alter Rebbe, and I spent in Ukraine, in Haditch, where the Alter Rebbe is buried, which of course is a very cold place, and they had all the alcohol, a little of the vodka they wanted to have cold, so it was in the snow. It was sitting in the snow, and I don't know if the rabbi did it or some individual did it. And I don't think it snowed on that Friday night. But maybe there'd be other questions with kind of pushing the snow, making if you had space already made and it's next to the snow. Possibly you can. I have to check into that. All right. See Masechta Shabbos. Okay, let's just continue. 17. Is there 17? Yes. Okay, if there's a mitzvah, what about bread that was baked by a baker or someone with the assumption that the person had there's enough Gentile interest in the bread that we can't assume the Gentile baked it for the Jew. So here we have Shulchan Aruch 325. 4. Cites a dispute among poskim, means the halachic authorities, concerning bread baked on Shabbos by a non-Jew. Rabbeinu Tam, the famous Rabbeinu Tam, who we learn about a lot in the Tosfos and the Gemara, from the house of Tosfos, prohibits it altogether because it may have been in a state of dough and inedible at twilight of Shabbos. So therefore it's noilat because you couldn't eat it, it was dough, and now it came into being bread. The Rosh Gra, or because the Jew may ask the non-Jew to bake the bread. Also was scared that we may ask them. Shulchan Aruch see Shavus Yaakov too. So there's difference of opinion that are brought down. Rabbeinu Tam says we're not going to go into the laws of Pasakum, of the laws of bread can you eat bread that's made by a Gentile, but put the question of Pasakum out of it, but the question of Shabbos. So the Rabbeinu Tam shows two concerns. One is that it was dough and it came into bread, and the second concern is that's brought down from the Rosh and the Gra that you may, by being permissible, so in a state of an emergency where someone has a bris and you forgot to have challah, so you don't have challah for Shabbos, you may come and ask someone to bake it because make bread, and if I don't eat it, or make 10 loaves and give me 2 loaves, kind of thing. And we don't want that. That crosses the line of a Jew asking a Gentile to do something on Shabbos. So therefore, because of that concern, then they wouldn't even allow, in the case of a mitzvah, to use the bread on Shabbos. Okay, the footnote kind of is a little vague in the connection to the halacha, because the halacha says clearly it is no, it's a case of nola. No one's arguing on the Rabbeinu Tam that it was dough before, um, Shabbos and was baked on Shabbos. Let's say, and it wasn't here before Shabbos. The question is for a mitzvah, if and the Gentile didn't bake it for you, if that's considered noila. I just want to see again the footnote he says over here. Obviously, we're not looking at the text of the Rabbeinu Tam himself. Okay, I see what he's saying. Sorry. The question is like this: if the Gentile were to make dough and bake bread, you don't have to make dough on Friday to bake the bread on Shabbos, right? The Gentile can make the dough Shabbos morning and then bake the bread on Shabbos. So here the Rebbeinu Tam is concerned. Actually, interesting. It's worse to have the dough on Friday be made into bread on Shabbos than to make dough and bread on Shabbos. Why? Because the dough was dough. Let's say in theory, again, not the questions of food prepared by a Gentile for a Jew, but let's say the dough was dough that you could have bought or taken from the Gentile, made your own bread. But now you can't use it because it was not you don't eat dough. You can't, it's inedible in a status of dough. So then when it went into the Shabbos, then just put aside that you need the bread and anything. When it put into Shabbos, the dough now became something of muktzeh. Why? Because it can't be used on Shabbos. Now that you're making it into bread, it's another thing. It becomes noilid. So it's worse that the dough was prepared before Shabbos than had the Gentile made the dough before Shabbos. And according to Rebbeinu Tam, that would make it prohibited on Shabbos. So therefore, we have to be concerned. Maybe the dough was made before Shabbos, and then it was muksa because of itself, and now it becomes noilid because it becomes bread. It's a separate issue.
What about okay, cookie dough? Because you can eat it raw. There's some that you can actually eat raw. And so you never tended to bake it. Neither the Jew, the Gentile, you're not going to bake it. You're going to eat it raw. But you mix it on Shabbos as a Jew, or you have a goy mix it for you. But you actually, could you eat it?
No, no, it's same. No, it's the same problem. Let me just explain to you. The Rebbeinu Tam, what he mentions from Rebbeinu Tam, the great Rebbeinu Tam, what he's pointing out over here is that it's worse for the dough to have been made on Friday and made and baked to bread on Shabbos than if the Gentile made dough and baked it on Shabbos. Because it didn't cross over. There's a crossover line. This was called Ben Hashmashas. As soon as we go from Friday to Shabbos, so it existed and then it wasn't good on Friday. It was dough, you couldn't eat it, and that crossover point now made the dough prohibited.
What
Nothing
about doughs you could eat raw?
that's not a problem because it's not it doesn't have it's like any food. It's a food. It's not a dough.
But you have to make it on Friday before Shabbos. But what if someone made it for you on
if
Shabbos?
you then it's noila. That's that then
Okay,
you're
so
not.
you can't eat it.
But here the Rebbeinu Tam is saying that this stipulation that the Kitzur says that if you have a mitzvah, then you could use the bread made by a Gentile if there's enough Gentiles that he made it not for you, and therefore you need a mitzvah, so you could be lenient in this case because Muktzeh itself is just a rabbinic concern to enhance the Shabbos. So the mitzvah could override this concern, but then there's a bigger problem. The problem is that when it crossed over to Shabbos, it was inedible, so therefore it became forbidden on Shabbos just as dough. Forget the fact that now you're going to make it into bread. So there's two problems, and therefore the Rebbeinu Tam is stringent in the case of the dough. And Rosa, of course, concerned the second idea that's a more practical concern, maybe that you may by being lenient in this case, then it's just going to lead to people being lenient and asking, someone to bake bread on your behalf, even though kind of, because you could just say that, oh, there's plenty of Gentiles, make 10 loaves, give me 2. So, because of all these reasons, there's opinions that say that if a Gentile were to bake bread on Shabbos, there's plenty of reasons to concern aside from the issue of Nailat. Okay. Let's continue. Law number 5. Kalim. Okay, we're going through different scenarios of Muktzeh. So we just discussed the concept of Noilat, something that came into existence on Shabbos. Hey, Kalim Shem Yuchadim Asbem Lacha Asura Le'ases b'Shabbos. This we discussed clearly. Let's say you have vessels or tools, utensils that their main job is to do something forbidden on Shabbos. He gives an example. Kigoin, Machteshes. He gives an example such as a mortar, Verichaim, a mill, Kurnas, a hammer, Patish. Kardom, which would be a axe, umachbeidais, brooms, shemachavdim esabayis. Those days, the brooms, the issue with the broom was, why is it forbidden on Shabbos? Because the brooms they had dirt floors, and the brooms were very harsh brooms, and then you can make holes in the ground. So the broom was itself something forbidden on Shabbos. But or shofar, right? Shofar that we blow in menorah, a candelabra. So the candelabra is meant for something that's forbidden, to light a candle. Machat shetoifrim boy, or a needle that's used for sewing. You can't sew on Shabbos. Venera shlemim, whole candles, bein shel chela, bein shel shaiva, whether it's made out of fat or wax. Upsilas mitzemer gefen, or wicks from cotton that could be used as wicks, which are forbidden on Shabbos, obviously, to burn. Begit shatnis sha'asil v'shay, or you have shatnis, you can't wear it. It's a clothing that's mixed of linen and wool. V'chein kol kayetze be'elu, and anything in the similar, right? So the actual menuchah, these are called kli melachta l'isur. They're kli, these are vessels or utensils that are used for, or their primary use is for something forbidden. We learned that in the charts the primary use is mutal letatl tzarich gufam. You are allowed to use them for their goof, for themselves, meaning koin kurnas, you could use a hammer lif saya by egoism. So you're not allowed to use a hammer itself is forbidden to build. You're not allowed to use it to knock nails. But let's say you need the hammer to knock open a walnut. So to open up a walnut on Shabbos is allowed. So you could pick up the hammer if you want to use it to knock to break a walnut, even though it's not its primary use. Or a kardem lachtich a michael, or an axe. You're using it not to chop down a tree, but to open up something for food. Machet shleima lita by sakaitz, or if you need a complete a needle to take out a splinter. We're not going to get into the question of taking out a splinter on Shabbos, but it has aval im nita uktzah aichuda asher b'chol tilta. But if it doesn't have the sharp end, doesn't have the point, so then it can't be used, and then you can't use. Then it has no practical use on Shabbos at all. So if you need to use the hammer for knocking, breaking a walnut, or an axe to open up, I don't know, some sort of food that's permissible to open on Shabbos, but the tool itself is a tool that its primary use is for something forbidden, then you're allowed to pick it up. Also, if the hammer is on your table and you want to use your table, so you're allowed to pick it up to take it off. It's called you're moving it for its place. You need its place. That you need to use the space that this utensil is on. So the idea is, because you picked it up permissibly. Why permissibly? Because you needed space. So you can't say you have to pick it up and move an inch and drop it on the floor. Once you're holding it, or if by mistake you picked it up, not for its space, but you just picked it up. Once you're ready holding it, then you could walk a little bit and put it down in a normal way, let's say in its shelf or what have you. So you can put it where you would like. But if you're not picking up the hammer to break a walnut, you have no need for its space. Just to carry it on its own. For instance, you left the hammer on the table. You don't need the table, and you don't need to crack a walnut, but you're scared someone's going to steal the hammer. Then you're not allowed to pick it up, because then it has no use for Shabbos. You're protecting the utensil for itself. Or or maybe you're scared it's going to get damaged. Then it's forbidden. Then it's muktzeh. Tefillin, for instance. Now the question is, what happens if you have your tefillin? Tefillin are not obviously an axe or a hammer, but we don't wear them on Shabbos. You're not allowed to just pick them up on Shabbos. But what about if your tefillin are left in a way that's disrespectful for the tefillin, to leave them like that? And also they could get damaged, and you want to keep the mitzvah, and let's say it's on the table, what have you. Then you can move it in a place that would secure the tefillin. Okay, let's see the footnotes on this law. So here we're having kli shehem yuchadim, that their specifically primary use is forbidden, but you can use them for permissible uses, like breaking the walnut. So those kind of utensils can be moved for their goof if you need to use them, and they can be moved for their place if they're taking up space. They cannot be moved for their own sake, meaning to protect them or to that they shouldn't get damaged or stolen, or just to carry them obviously for no reason is for sure not allowed. Then it's muktzeh. Okay.
So let me just ask you, if you're afraid they're going to be stolen, you have a walnut and you say, I wasn't really going to eat the walnut, but I'll eat one walnut so I can move it so it's not stolen. Can you do that?
Harama, it's called, like kind of cheating a bit. Good question. I'm sure it's discussed in the more at length Shulchan Aruch. I don't have the answer offhand. It could be in certain cases that would be allowed. I don't want to say for sure. It could be that case would be allowed if you actually use it. Not that you're thinking about breaking a walnut, but you actually break a walnut and you eat it. Possibly in that case, they would be allowed. I'm not going to say for certain. I'll check. I'm sure it's written. I'm sure that's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch. All right, let's see 18. What are we talking about? So utensils that its primary work is forbidden, even if it's only drabanan, even if its prohibition is only rabbinic. So then it's still considered muktzeh if it's not being used for its goof for its makom. However, if it's something that is used for lawfully permitted work, but some refrain from doing it because they are stringent, such as objects, such objects are not muktzeh, says the Pri Megadim. Meaning to say, if let's say people don't eat walnuts and are strict, either they don't eat walnuts or what have you. So, or you're adding on to the letter of the law, which means you don't do the things that they can be used for and as a permissible use. So that's not considered muktzeh. It means if its primary use is something permissible, just you took on yourself a chumrah not to do that thing on Shabbos, that doesn't make it muktzeh because you took on a chumrah. It has to be rabbinic or biblical, not because you took a chumrah, you took something strict that you don't do on Shabbos, and therefore even someone else who does it on Shabbos, it's a kli shemlach de lemuter leheter, it's something it's mutter, but for you don't use it, so that doesn't make it muktzah. Okay, which is an idea there, meaning even though for you as an individual that's something you wouldn't use, but by your extra stringent restriction of the law doesn't have the power to make this this article muktzeh. It is forbidden that's for work that's forbidden on Shabbos. Objects that are intended for both forbidden and non-forbidden use are muktzeh if the majority of the use is forbidden. That's what we spoke about last week. Primary use. So it says the Pri Megadim Darche Hachayim. Bir halacha questions this. For if it is often used for non-forbidden work, then no muktzeh should apply. He agrees, however, where normally the use is forbidden and is only occasionally used for non-forbidden work, then it is muktzeh. Okay, so then obviously there's a lot of questions that we have to ask about over here. It's not forbidden work, but for instance, you're not allowed to, you can't just clean the chickens on Shabbos because let's say the scissors that are used for food, the scissors that are used for cutting chicken or what have you. So if they're mainly used for raw chicken, so that's a problem because the raw chicken itself you're not allowed to prepare raw chicken unless you eat raw chicken, and raw chicken is not eaten. So then the chicken itself is muktzah, and you can't possibly use the scissors. But let's say could you use the scissors, for cutting something else, and is it considered primary use? Or if you have other utensils that are used only for axes or hatchets or what have you that's used for food that's could be prepared on Shabbos. So then it's a kli shemlachte, that mostly used for heter. So then you don't have to come on to using it for itself or for using it for its place. It could be it's never muktzeh in the first place. So here he says there's a disagreement of this on there's a kind of a refining of the law based on different opinions. So one opinion is that if it has a lot of use for both, then it's not considered muktzeh. Others hold if its primary use is for forbidden, then it is muktzeh, unless you need it for its goof or its makom. And everyone agrees that if it's even if it could be used for both, but it's very rarely used for, or it's rarely used for permissible use, then it's muktzeh. Okay. I don't have a good example offhand. Let's
Let me ask you one thing. If any of the items you just mentioned fall on the floor, and Jews all have big families, so your kids are going to run around, they might step on it. Can you pick it up?
Yeah, that's different. We spoke about that 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
Like
okay.
if glass breaks, that's different. For safety is obviously different. But we're talking about like if you just like let's say and I'm not just something on top of my head. Let's say you have a guest coming over, right? And you don't know who the guests are, what have you, or you have questionable guests, what have you, or people come, what have you, and you're concerned that if this, that you know that your phone is sitting there, right? It's not sitting in a place that you need its place. It's not sitting. So can you move it because you're scared it's going to be stolen? Okay. Let's see. Such as a mortar and a mill. These are things that have primary use, which is forbidden, but also can be used for something that is permissible. All these objects are muktzeh, as these utensils are used as a base for or to serve these objects. In other words, candlesticks. They're either like a base for the candlesticks, or they're the actual candlesticks. These are all considered vessels that are connected to forbidden use. What is the sweeping in the house? Like I mentioned before, when floors were dirt and earth, and it was forbidden to sweep on Shabbos because you would make holes, so then the broom was considered a forbidden thing to hold. Now we have wood or stone, or what have you. We don't have, it's not common to have earth, brooms, but that would apply to a rake, rake is not used in the house. Okay, 22. What is a shofar? Rabbi Akiva Eiger forbids totally the handling of a shofar since it's rarely used for anything else. So the Rabbi Akiva Eiger says there's nothing else you could use the shofar for. What are you going to do? Use the shofar to break an egg? I mean, like, what are you using the shofar for? So the Rabbi Akiva Eiger doesn't consider it as something that's primary use is forbidden, but something more like a davar shechsar kis. You would never use it for something else. I'm assuming that's what he means. Candelabra. Okay, so the Pri Megadim rules that this applies even to a candlestick that has never been used. This is a question Mechlal and halacha. That's something that is used for forbidden use, but has not yet been used ever, like ovens or other electronics. So candlesticks, let's say you buy a candlestick from the store, and you never lit it, you never lit them yet, you never used them yet. So the Pri Megadim says rules that they supplies even the candlestick has never been used. Eli Rabbah, another authority, and the Tehillah LeDavid's opinion, however, is that merely having in mind to use candlesticks isn't sufficient for muktzeh. The idea that you bought candlesticks with intention to light them, but you haven't yet lit them yet, so that doesn't make them muktzeh. They have to have at least been used for their forbidden use. The poskim generally rule that an object that is clearly intended for melacha is muktzeh, even if it's never been used. A candlestick that is still lit at twilight is muktzeh for all purposes for the remainder of Shabbos. So here we're talking about when is the candlestick in question that we're talking about is not, this is a very important point to know. You can't just decide to use the candlestick, I don't know, whatever you decide to use it for. Let's say, I don't know, it's not a fancy one, and it's not, you want to use it again to crack walnuts. Use it as a hammer to crack the walnuts. And you used it also the Friday night to light candles. That's not the kind of candlesticks we're talking about. We're talking about, let's even assume the Pri Megadim who says that it has to have been used. You used it during the week, but this Shabbos it hasn't been used. So it's a kli shemelachtei le'isur because it's been used. According to the opinions, it has to first been used. So let's say it's been designated. It's been used for forbidden use already. But this Shabbos it wasn't used, and now you want to use it for whatever the use is. Then you're allowed to use it. Or if you want to move it, if it's taking up space, if you need the space of candelabras that have not been lit on Shabbos, it's okay to pick it up because you need the space. We're talking the candelabras but if the candelabras are the candles that you used Friday night to light your Shabbos candles, or you had them lit Shabbos for whatever reason, then it's something else. Then it becomes forbidden. Like I said, it crossed twilight in a forbidden state, and then it can never be used. Yes, Rebecca, you're on mute.
Okay, so let's say I go to someone's house for Shabbos and I light like for my Shabbos candles, I light tea lights, which are disposable. It's like a metal thing after it melts, after it finishes burning. So I
Mm.
put two tea lights on a disposable plate on the table, and that's where I light. And then like let's say Shabbos day, like it doesn't look so nice for lunch, and like the person, my host, is like a little bit OCD, are they allowed to throw out that plate?
That we're going to learn about that. That's separate. That's a basis of davar aser. The candle, the tea lights are forbidden. They would cross twilight lit. We're talking about a case where they've been lit. If they're not, if they're just candles that haven't been lit, then you tzarech makaymin. You need them for their space. And I'm not. Let's assume that tzarech makaymin would apply to OCD not sitting on the table. I don't want it on the table. But even the plate doesn't help because the plates that carry the candles become a basis, a support, which we're going to learn about a little bit in this chapter and more in next chapter, and how we deal with things that are supportive davar aser that cross twilight. So
So yeah.
just off the cuff on that question, just as is, it would be forbidden to pick up the plate and throw it out.
Okay, what about if I lit the two tea lights on her like granite kitchen counter, then can they be thrown out?
No, you can't touch it. How can you touch them?
You can't touch it the next
Oh, okay,
day.
then okay, we're going to go into the question of klach or yad if you're not touching it directly, but that you have to see if that applies to candlesticks that were lit on Shabbos versus
Hmm.
things that are just muktzeh.
And what
This
about on Yom Tov, if the same thing happens on Yom Tov?
if it's not muktzeh, you're allowed to touch the candles. You light them on Shabbos on Yom Tov.
And I mean like the next day, can you throw it out?
Let's assume you can. Yes, I have to check for sure, but
Okay.
let's assume you can. All
Okay,
right,
thank you.
no problem. Number 24 is on candles. So candles are something forbidden. You're not allowed you light them on Shabbos. But here we're talking about just could you pick up candles? Could you if the candles if a box of candles were left the on the table, can you pick up and move them? Okay, so he says so Magen Avram and Mishnah Berurah 308:34. However, others rule that says you can use it if you need its place or you need its goof. I mean, if you have a use for the candles for something. However, others rule that a candle has no use whatsoever on Shabbos and is not considered a kliya vessel and may not be handled for any purpose. Shar tshuva more uktzia pri megadim. So the question is, a candle doesn't. It's like the shofar. What are you using the candle for? Some say because it could be used for something permissible, so then you could use it for its goof or its makam. Because something that is primary use is forbidden, which is candles to light them as candles is forbidden. But it has a secondary use, but it's not a keli. Candle is not a keli, it's not a vessel. It's an object, and it's not. I mean, you can't say it's a vessel because we're not talking about a receptacle that holds oil. We're talking about a candle. So that it doesn't have any use, and it's not a keli, so it's considered something that's not allowed to be used on Shabbos. And that the same thing is probably applicable to the question of matches. The matches that you light the Shabbos candles with, let's say with a lighter, right? So even there's no, it means it didn't cross over. The box of matches weren't lit on Shabbos, but it has no other use outside of matches.
But the candle that is lit is used for light.
No, we're not talking about a candle that's lit. We're talking about, let's say you have
Oh.
a box of candles on your table. You didn't light them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. What's shatnez? Shatnez is, we said, clothing that are made of forbidden materials. It means mixed forbidden materials. A garment containing wool and linen, which the Torah forbids to be worn at all times. You're not allowed to wear clothing that are made of linen and wool. We're not going to get into the subject of that, but that's the law. Many poskim, the Eli Rabbah and Shulchan Aruch Harav, meaning the Alter Rebbe and Mishnah Berurah, disagree with the author and prohibit handling shatnez for any purpose. Again, like the question about the candles, there's no use at all because you can't use it. You can't have any use for shatnez. Therefore, they say you can't use it. It's not movable at all. It doesn't fall under chelim. It's not primary use is forbidden. It has no other use. Okay.
But if you bought it on Friday and now it's Shabbos, you didn't get a chance to check it and to fix it. So what do you do on Shabbos? Because you're going to start wearing it after you get it checked.
Yeah, but as the garment is now, it's not permissible.
Okay.
All right, that's a good question though. 25. I mean, I remember still today. I don't know when I was in the 90s when we were in Shiva boys buying suits. You bought it. I mean, it's a normal thing. You bought a suit. I don't think now that either they're less concerned or they're checking it. But when we bought the suit, you went straight to the guy in Williamsburg and he checked quickly. And sometimes he would had his little tweezers and he had to pull out a thread here and there because they were sharpness. Okay. So you're allowed to, if you have a needle, that's primary use is obviously to sew, which is forbidden, but you could also use it as a tool to take out a splinter. And growing up, that was almost its primary use. We were getting splinters all the time, and my mother, I think, was at least equally using the needle for taking out our splinters. Where another permitted utensil is ready available, it is preferable that the muktzeh not be handled. That means if you have something else that could be used to take out the okay, this applies to all the above mentioned. That means the splinter and above. If you have a nutcracker, so don't go take the hammer. If you have something else to open up the food, don't take the axe. So where another permitted utensil is readily be available, it is preferable that this muktzeh not be handled. Mishnah Berurah 308:12. Others rule that the muktzeh object may be used even when something else is available. So says the Kitzur Shulchan and Tosfos Shabbos. So there's a disagreement. Rebecca, your hand is raised. Do you still have a question? Okay. So again, there's a disagreement about if it's the only available tool, or if you have other available tools, if you should use the hammer versus the nutcracker. Okay. 27. Okay, that once you pick it up, if you need it for its space, all the above things. Okay, we discussed like we did the charts last week. These are what we're talking in this law. We're dealing with utensils that have either your utensil, they're keli, and their primary use is forbidden on Shabbos, but they have a secondary or other uses that is permitted on Shabbos. Things that have no other use have different laws. Things that are not utensils have different laws, and therefore in the footnotes we've questioned certain of the rulings of the Kitzur, like a shofar, like a candle, like shatnez, if those are considered primary use of negative, where it has other uses, and where other opinions have disagreed with the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, if those objects fall under this category of primary forbidden use but have secondary permitted use. Primary forbidden use, secondary permitted use. Okay, so he says over here, but once you pick it up for its space, these things that have a primary forbidden and a secondary permitted, so you don't have to just drop it or put it right down. You could put it in a proper place. The Magen Avram, however, so says the Magen Avram. However, Gra prohibits handling the object any further when you inadvertently picked it up. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch paskins and compares both if you pick up something for its place, or if by mistake you pick something up, not for its place, you just picked it up by mistake. So the question is, if I picked up something by mistake, once I'm holding it, do I have to drop it? Or for once I'm holding it, I could just put it down properly. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch paskins like rules, like the Magen Avram, once it's already in your hand, you could put it in its proper place. However, the Gaon of Vilna, the Gra, disagrees. He says if you picked it up for something that for its place, then it's okay. If something that is permissible to pick up, and you picked it up for its place, you're allowed to. But if you picked it up by mistake, the Gra says you cannot continue to walk and put it away. You have to put it down. Okay, Rebecca, about your question about how to move a basis l'davar aser, is there something you could do to put on the plate that would not make the plate now equally a support of the candles and something else? We'll discuss when we get to those laws. We deal with those laws of how to balance support, meaning that, let's say some people put a siddur, on the tray, so then it becomes a support. But the question is we have to discuss it, because there's about about, I mean, Rebecca's question in the chat is basically if you put something permissible on a plate that also has candles, if you can move it on, if you could move it on Shabbos. We discuss those laws when we get there. But that's the laws of support. Yes, Rebecca.
I just thought of something else. So, like my building has a fob that I have to use to get into some of the places, like some
And again,
spaces.
say that again. Has it
Do you
what?
know what a fob is? FOB. It's like an electronic like key thing that you put it in front of a panel and then it unlocks the door.
Like
Have you ever seen that?
the electric, like a credit card kind of thing, right?
Mm, sort of similar. It's like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
It looks like
So
on a keychain or something like that. Yeah.
yeah, on a
Yeah.
keychain. Right. So let's say I hold by the Eruv and it's on my keychain. I have to take it off before Shabbos, because obviously I'm not using it on Shabbos and it's Muktzeh, correct?
In theory, yes, yes. You mean or even if you have your house key on your car keys and your car keys has the electric.
So you have to
Oh,
remove your
yeah,
car key.
yeah.
Okay. And then
I mean, I'm assuming the fob. And I don't know how it works. If it works on if it's kli melachta l'isser, that's a good question.
Okay, so I can explain it like this because my parents had it and I spent Shabbos with them. So to go down the stairs, to go outside to take a walk or whatever, you don't need it. You could just open the door because no fire hazards. But going up, they don't want people who somehow got in the building. So you have to put the thing, I don't know if it's by a magnet or by electronic, but it's a circle thing. It looks like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
air tag.
I
yeah,
know.
but you for sure can't do that on Shabbos. You for sure
No, but you
can't use
can't
it
get in
on
the building
Shabbos.
then, because let's say you
Well,
don't use the
then
elevator,
you
and
need
the
to figure
elevator
out
even needs it.
something else. You can't use that on Shabbos because it's electric.
That's
It's
right.
So
She's
how do
right.
you get in?
You
Because
have
there's
to.
no way to go up the stairs.
You have to
that's a
work it out. You
separate
have to.
issue.
Yeah, that's a separate issue. You have to work it out with the guard or your parents. But yeah,
Um, I have
Rebecca's
another.
100 is correct.
But I have another question. So, we have in New York, actually, they just got rid of it, but, um, or actually, maybe they didn't, but for the bus, people use this like plastic, it's like a plastic card kind of that gives you like, entry for the bus. So, like, I was on a Shabbaton and people came from like another part of Manhattan and I guess they had that with them because they were going to use it. They said they were going to take the bus back after Shabbos. So, like, you can't carry that on Shabbos because its purpose is for something that's malacha, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I want to check. I want to check on both things because, for instance, up until recently, I used to have, that we use those in gyms and we use those in the mikveh, and they're all the time attached to your keys. And I do believe I do believe that it's magnetic. I don't think it's battery because you never change a battery unless it has an everlasting battery. But nevertheless, definitely. But on the question that Aaron asked about using it on Shabbos is forbidden. These credit cards, like bus cards that's used. It's also it's not electronic. It's obviously
Yeah, I
magnetic.
think it's magnetic.
No, it's definitely, they still use it because they just made a new one if you don't want to use your credit card or your phone. But let me just say what my son said. My son said, no, your any keys that you don't need and key fobs with anything that you would swipe or anything. So we just ended up making separate keys on a separate keychain. And if you hold by on the roof, you allowed to carry it. He
Yeah,
says, why are you carrying your car keys even?
yeah, 100%. You're not allowed to carry things on Shabbos that are not necessary. No, so you're not allowed to prepare for Shabbos, Matzah Shabbos. We spoke about that, but those questions have been discussed. But are they actually a kli shemalachte leisur is has to be discussed. But
I mean, like, just
Like,
to give her example, she said
uh,
people brought it because they needed after Shabbos.
her name
So
is
my
Rebecca.
son would say, put it in your bag. Why do you need
or
it?
they used it right before Shabbos or
Right. So
whatever.
put it
Oh,
back in your
no.
bag.
Using it before Shabbos and then leaving it in the corners is leaving it in the house that you're in. But to carry it on your person, you're saying, oh, you mean to carry it home?
Right. I mean to carry it. Like,
That's not simple at all. I don't know if these. I have to check if these things are considered like a lighter or kli shemalachti l'isur. But they definitely trigger something that's forbidden.
So
Like
But what
the Omni
about
cards for New York have a thing that it scans it, so it can read it, and then it takes money off your card if you have the card.
yeah, I mean,
Otherwise,
I'm assuming
wait,
that
so
there's
my
no
question
battery
is,
in it.
could you get around like let's say you use that card to like, I don't know, to like get the crumbs off your Shabbos table or something like that
no, no,
at
no,
the meal where you went
no, no,
to.
no,
Like
no,
then does it become permissible?
that's a good question. Then it would be if you're using it if you're using it now as something for again, you have to go into the question if you have something else to use that's permissible, can you just pick up things that are forbidden because you want to have
Or use it as a bookmark or something. I don't know.
so yeah, to put a bus card, a magnetic bus card as a bookmark could be that you're using it to the gufay. Then it would. I mean, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. If it's not electron, if it doesn't, if it's not like it could be falls under the. I have to check. It could be falls under something shedavar shechasar kis.
Let's just ask this one question:
Oh,
Is
hold on,
magnets
Aaron, hold on,
forbidden?
but Aaron, hold on. I have to finish a few more footnotes, and we have to finish the class. I just want to say that we're going to learn in the next law about chasar and kis, means things that are valuable and you wouldn't use them because they're valuable, and it could be that these bus cards that are functional, not that they expire or something like that, but they're functional now. That you wouldn't use them as a book card because there's a concept of chasar and kis. You don't want to lose it. So it's not so simple. Like to create a use for it, taking off crumbs may be different, but like you wouldn't just use it as a bookmark if it had value because people are scared you're going to lose it or misplace it, and you need it to travel the bus. It could be that falls under Muktzeh machmas chasar and kis, which is the next halacha, which is you're not going to use your iPhone to hammer in to break a walnut. So you can't say, well, I want to use it to break a walnut because it's made out of all the things that Apple says it's made out of that it could drop from me. You wouldn't do it. So it's chasar and kis. So I have to let me check into all these things for next class. I just want to finish at least one more footnote. I don't know. We'll get to your questions. Put it, whatever is on your head. Please hold on to it. Remember what it is, and we'll discuss it. We'll catch up on it next week. But let's just do this one footnote over here. Without stopping to rest, once you stop, you must put it down. So if you pick up something that you needed for its place, let's say in the case where the gra agrees, so you can't just hold it and hold it and hold it until you want to put it down. You have to go and take it right away to put it away. But if you stop to rest, then you must put it down wherever you are. So says the Shuas Yaakov and our Samech Shabbos 24:12. This allowance applies only to the particular muktzeh discussed in this paragraph. In other words, malachte liser, objects that are primarily for use of that are forbidden on Shabbos, which are kalim, which are vessels. However, objects that are not kalim, i.e., a credit card is not a keli, a bus card is not a vessel. In other words, pebbles, bones may not be handled at all. So we have to check if a credit card, I mean, used as taking the crumbs off could be considered a keli because let's say you had an extra bus card, possibly you would use it to take off the crumbs. So that's maybe different. But those little pods that you're talking about that are hanging on your keychain, there is no real use for it outside
Can
of.
I just add something? So when you're looking into whether or not the bus card would be okay, it's not like it has like it's not necess it's worth whatever amount of money you put on it. So somebody could put on just like $3 so they could get home after Shabbos or whatever. It's not
Yeah, yeah,
necessarily
yeah,
like a monthly card.
I understand that, but the problem is when I say machmas, I have to check if it's machmas chasar and kis, is because traditionally these things that are used for let's say a bus card. I know with my kids in Israel we've been using all the time. Eretz Yisrael we've been using all the time is but the what do they call them the I forget the name the bus cars that they have for the buses and trains. That you have to make you don't want to misplace it. So it's something I always tell my kids keep it in your bag, but it's something because even if it doesn't make a difference how much value it has on the how much value it has on the actual card, how much money it has, but if it has money, you want to use it. Ravkav, thank you, Z. It's called the Ravkav. So you want to use you want to keep it. So you're not going to just throw it around the house and use it as a bookmark. Maybe some
Right,
people,
but I'm just saying these are like disposable. Like you could just go to a
yeah, yeah,
machine
yeah.
and get another one. So it's not valuable in the same way that you're
I, I,
talking
I,
about.
I know, but
Okay.
but valuable doesn't have to mean that you're gonna go to the to your wedding with it. And valuable means that you protect it. It's something that you don't just throw around. And valuable. If your insurance card also, it's the same question. It's not you just don't want it. You don't want it. It's not something you just have that you just that's just that's okay. This question could go to many things. All right, but let's stop here. We have to finish the footnotes next week. Aaron, if your question was short, ask it now. So then
Okay, my question was just, is magnets, if it runs by magnets or not, is magnets allowed on Shabbos to play with?
it depends. It depends if it's part of something that's permissible on Shabbos or not, I guess. But in general, we're going to learn.
Toys that are magnets for kids.
Toys, kids are allowed to play with toys on Shabbos. But if you have like those plastic pieces that connect, but if just a toy with we're going to learn. We learned it last week in the charts to just toy around with something for just to flip it in your fingers because you need to hold something. Okay, not talking about a case where that's kind of a therapy for a person who needs to touch things. But let's say you just flicking a fork in your hand, that's not permissible, even if a fork is permissible. So magnets, if it has a use like toys, which is permissible for kids to use toys on Shabbos, then I'm assuming that magnets alone is nothing. It's nothing forbidden about a magnet on Shabbos. Okay, we'll pick up. I think we're holding. So remember, we're holding footnote number 929 of. I'll if you Barbara, if you can remember that, you would be good at that to remember the 29, and we'll try to pick up next week. Lila,
Thank you.
Break it down.
There was
Thank you,
a
Rabbi.
question in the chat that like Z asked a question in the chat. Another
No, no.
question. I think you just wrote something. Yeah.
No, you just wrote Ravkav. Ravkav is the name of the bus card in Israel.
Well,
Oh, no. But I'm saying just like right above that, he said like can she put a cracker, bread or candy to allow the movement? You see that right above that? He wrote
In Rebecca's case of candles, could she put a cracker? Oh, yeah, that's the question. We're going to learn about buses, Davrasa. We're going to get to that next chapter. Deals with things that support forbidden things. Lila Tov, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
For joining. You're welcome.
Yep.
Thank you,
Sure.
Rabbi.